Gareth Southgate, and it's all him to blame, okay? So we should emphasise straight away here that whether the players themselves scored or missed, their colour should be and usually is irrelevant on these matters. And if we had an old-fashioned English manager, then colour would indeed be irrelevant, and it wouldn't be pushed up to be the be-all and end-all of everything in the way that Gareth Southgate has made it. But we can't ignore the fact that these three young players were put into that position by woke Southgate because of their colour. Because of their colour. When two of them were unprepared because they were literally fresh off the bench, and the third one, Saka, was a 19-year-old who had never taken a penalty before. Certainly not at that level of football. But he did that deliberately in order to promote his, what I would call, racial mania. Okay, racial mania is the word, because Southgate's obsessed with race. Most of us don't really think about it, and largely we've come just to ignore it over time. But Southgate is obsessed with it, and he's obsessed with bringing it up all the time, just like Good Morning Britain, the programme in the morning, is obsessed with race. I don't remember people being obsessed with race in the 80s, 90s, 2000s, even the 2010s, to the extent that they are today. Really obsessing about it like a mania almost. Something that's strange. So Southgate wanted to put up these players in order to promote his racial narrative, okay, of some kind of New England. To make some kind of racial point, really known only to himself. But this was his obsession. And the whole kneeling thing as well comes from that obsessive race obsession that Southgate has. And so he wanted these three black players to win it for England, so he could then say, look at the wonders of what he calls diversity, look at the wonders of immigration, isn't that fantastic? And unfortunately, it did not happen the way that he thought it would happen. In fact, it was the very worst thing that could have happened from his narrative, because these three players not only fouled up the penalties, but they fouled them up in a farcical manner, which almost like from a comedy film, like almost like a comedy of errors. It's like, how bad could you take a penalty? And those three guys responded to that challenge, and every single penalty was worse than the one before. And I mean, Saka, I have to say about Saka, he did fire an extremely good pass back to the goalkeeper. I mean, if that had been his goal, he could have passed that. That would have been like the number one pass to a goalkeeper in history. Okay, that was Saka's attempt. Unfortunately, it wasn't a pass back to a goalkeeper. It was meant to be a penalty. Okay, I mean, these penalties were ironic and farcical in their awfulness. And so straight away, this Gareth Southgate's racial mania and his racial narrative just collapsed in those few minutes. And we're not at all blaming these black players, because they should have not been put into that position. It was Southgate who carries all the can for doing that, because two of those players were fresh off the bench. Their legs would just be cold, for crying out loud, and the third one was not competent at his age to take it. And it wasn't fair for him to take it either, because he's just starting his footballing career as a 19-year-old, and I'm afraid that's going to haunt him for a while. That failure will haunt him, and it was wrong to have put a 19-year-old in that position. But you see, this is what political correct mania will do to somebody. They will put a young chap up there who's not properly the man to do it. And if one or two of you have already said, there was plenty of other players there, including Sterling, who's black as well, who was warmed up and who's a great kicker and could have put it in the back of the net. Just like Maguire put it in the back of the net. I mean, Maguire put it in the back of the net so hard, he actually broke the camera at the back of the net. And that's how you take a penalty. You know, I could have kicked the ball harder than Rashford did. You know, my granny could have kicked the ball harder than these guys, quite frankly. Everybody I know could have done made a better fist of it than these three guys who are getting paid millions of pounds a year to put the ball in the back of the net. Yet they unfortunately just made such a catastrophic failure of it. But we're not blaming them, we're blaming Gareth Southgate for putting them in that position in order for him to promote his racial narrative of diversity and this new England idea that Southgate is completely responsible for. And you know, Southgate does have form on this. He does have a political agenda. In June 2018, and we'll put the video up there of it, we found it on Twitter yesterday, it's circulating, and he said, quote, "I don't like the connotations around Brexit. There were some generational opinions about what modern Britain should look like. We felt that young people in particular would connect with our guys because they must have been confused after Brexit. Because for me, a lot of the undertones of the voting on Brexit were racial undertones. In other words, if you vote for Brexit, you're some kind of mad racist or potential racist, according to Gareth Southgate in an interview back in June 2018, broadcast in November 2018. So this is where this guy's coming from, okay? He does have this racial mania going on that most normal people don't have, yet he forces it onto the rest of us, including his young players, okay? And he puts them into positions that they're not meant to be in. So Southgate has a serious agenda to promote his own political agenda, because he seems to be a man who sees society solely through the lens of race, which is an extremely misleading frame to see society, and an extremely murky one at that. But he chooses to do so, and he has to be criticised, and we are criticising them. We're criticising Southgate for doing that. We're not criticising the players for getting into a bad position that Southgate put them into. So when that collapsed, okay, when these three players made such a foul up of it, the narrative immediately changed into claiming almost immediately that Twitter was being swamped by racist England fans. Well, I basically live on Twitter, and I have to say, I never personally saw any of these comments. The first I heard about it was the politicians complaining about all of these comments, and I thought that's surprising, because I would have seen something. You know, I'm reading thousands of tweets almost every day. I would have seen something, and I had never seen anything. So I don't know where these tweets were, but apparently there was a lot of them. But what that tells me, if I'm not seeing them, if they're not coming into my organic feed, then there must be new people, or they must be people without followers. Because if they had potential followers, those followers would have retweeted it, and their tweets would have come into my feed. So immediately I was suspicious. And I was right to be suspicious, as I'll get to in a moment. But what disturbed me was straight away Boris Johnson comes out going, "Oh, so terrible to see all of these things." What did he in fact say? He said, "The England team deserve to be lauded as heroes, not racially abused on social media." So straight away he's suggesting that, you know, people are racially abusing the England team. Well, who's doing this? Who's doing this? Well, yesterday it comes out, people started diving into who are these people who are doing it. And GB News said that something that calls itself the Centre for Identifying Digital Hate had identified 105 Instagram accounts, and of those they could only find 5 from the United Kingdom. Okay. Toby Young last night tweeted out that the Premier League's data itself monitoring abuse against players has shown that around 70% of cases are coming from users outside the United Kingdom. And a lot of these are just troll accounts. As we've said before, China or Russia or any country in the world, or simply just somebody who's trying to create mischief, can set up a Twitter account and can fire stuff out and everybody in the world will see it. Okay, now China has a concept of unrestricted warfare. What that means is they cause problems for their enemies throughout the world on any platform, on any level that they possibly can. Don't tell me they haven't got an army of people on the internet firing out tweets pretending to be English supporters. Of course they do. Of course they do. And there's even the extent to which our own with people in the United Kingdom itself will create these false hate crimes. Like if you're a Black Lives Matter supporter, it's in your interests to portray England fans as racist. So all you need to do is set up a false account and pretend that you're some racist English fan and put that out and about, and hey, presto, you've created a big issue on things. And here's a funny one, which we didn't tweet out because it included the original tweet in it. But there's one out there claiming to be a white man. He's got a white man's profile, wearing an England shirt with a really English name. And he has been very racially abusive in his tweet. But what he forgot to do was to remove all the tweets below his last tweet. All he did was he changed his profile picture and he changed his name. But if you scroll down his tweet, you actually find he's a Somali and a Muslim, okay, pretending to be an English supporter named Mark. Okay, that's how easy it is to do this on Twitter. So people need to like wise up and realize how easy it is to defraud and spread misinformation and spread disinformation on Twitter. So I won't be surprised if the overwhelming majority of these so-called racist tweets, however you define that, are in fact from abroad or from people who are just creating trouble. But what that did, of course, was it was able to change the narrative. And instead of people criticizing Gareth Southgate for his woke agenda, which had put these three poor guys in such a bad position that they missed their penalties, instead of criticizing Southgate for that woke agenda, they doubled down on it. And they simply just tried to pretend, okay, England didn't win, but England's racist anyway. Look how racist England is. All the English people are racist. You know, it's like you can't escape from it almost. So, we don't have a whole lot more to say than that, except Gareth Southgate needs to be held to account for his woke agenda. It's unacceptable what he did to these three poor black guys, putting them in that position when they were not fitted for that position, simply in order to promote his racial mania. Oh, yeah. So, exactly, impersonation is a huge online problem. And yeah, absolutely right regarding these tweets. Alfie says the left are sending this racist abuse along with communist China and Russia. I've no doubt that these enemies of our country are using Twitter for this, and we've seen it too on the Scottish nationalist thing and also on the COVID thing. Any sensible voice gets shot down, and then you go and look and say, who is this person that's trying to shoot us down? And it's usually some kind of silly name. It's usually an anonymous profile pic, and the person's usually got 1 to 15 followers, which says that they either started that account that day, or they maybe just started that account in order to reply anonymously to us. And it's a huge thing, and that worries me if there were ever to be a second referendum. Goodness me. All of the enemies of the United Kingdom who want to see the United Kingdom broken up will literally mobilize their digital armies on Facebook and Twitter in order to attack us. And there's simply not enough of us to effectively fight back against that. So it's a serious issue. Well, Adam says there, what do you think about the front page of the National where it shows the Italian coach's face superimposed onto William Wallace? I think it's just stupid, is what I think. And it's very sad that, we put out tweets and TikTok videos and so on prior to the game saying, bring it home for Britain. Because the way we see it, if you're British, you're involved, and we love to see England doing well, we love to see Northern Ireland or Wales doing well, and vice versa also. We don't think that that kind of nasty rivalry is good within the United Kingdom. Of course we get footballing rivalry, and we understand that, but we don't think you should make a big thing of that. You shouldn't blow it up, because once you blow that up, you are playing with fire, and the National was certainly playing with fire on that. So there's no, yeah, we our position is keep politics out of sport, Colin. Yes, keep politics out of sport. I don't quite know what you mean there about the reverse thing. Yeah. So Linda says, you're so right, Alistair. Saka has only taken 2 professional penalties, one for England youth and one for Arsenal. He missed one and scored one. He should never have been put under that pressure. Of course, that's absolutely right. Absolutely right. And, I don't watch Good Morning Britain, but I check it out on Twitter. And this morning, it was all about taking the knee. Okay, so again, it's still this racial mania that they're pushing us under, and it was also about why we all should wear masks. Okay, so think about that. Imagine if you're a little child watching that. You come away saying, I have to wear a mask and I have to kneel. Now, both of these things are symbols of submission. Okay, so it's like they're trying to get us to submit. All of us, regardless of our race, are trying to get us to submit with masking and kneeling, and that's really sinister, and it's pushed out as if it's virtuous. Oh my, goodness me.